Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the Druid uniques, and we're going to start out with a simple pair of boots known as the Wildheart Hunger boots. The Wildheart Hunger boots are a pair of boots that actually gives you a pretty nice increase in damage output if you can find a decent pair, which I never seem to be able to come up with a decent pair, so I'm currently using these 2%, which are like mids at best. First off, you'll see that it has attacks reduce evades cooldowns by 1.5 seconds, so obviously the faster you attack, the faster your cooldowns will reduce for your evade, which is not bad, but it's not quite as good as the 3 extra evade charges. On top of this, we also have the 8 to 10.4% shapeshifting attack speed, so if you are using any kind of shapeshifting, it definitely gives you a nice little bump there. And then we get 36.8 to 46% cold resistance, which is kind of meh. And then on top of that, we also have the heightened senses. So 1 to 2 heightened senses. Heightened senses, I'm pretty sure, is this one here, which is the when shapeshifting into animal form. Werebear gains 6% damage reduction, and Werewolf gains 4% movement speed. For each 6 seconds, the bonuses are doubled while both are active. So you get a nice little damage reduction here from the heightened senses. And if you get a greater affix there, it's probably 3. So a pretty good amount of damage reduction from heightened senses if you're switching back and forth. And of course, that's the entire purpose of this item, by the way. It also has movement speed bonus on here, which I'm pretty sure is like 18% base, but as you can see, mine is a greater affix with a masterwork on it, so it goes even higher than that. And I do have mine masterwork to 4 at the moment, which isn't really all that high. The special effect on these boots is when you shapeshift into a werewolf or a werebear, you gain Wildheart for 5 seconds. Wildheart grants you a stacking damage every 2 seconds, which can vary between 1 to 3%, and it goes up to 40% times at the moment. The highest that you can get, of course, is 60% times. That's basically just a 60% times multiplier, which is certainly pretty nice. The special flavor text on this says, "Do not seek comfort in the shapes of the moon, Beastwalker. Its pallid light awakens a yawning hunger. Call the beast, but do not tarry, lest you never return to your own skin." Now, to activate this effect, basically what you have to do is you have to remain in a shapeshifted form for a certain period of time. It doesn't work unless you're in a shapeshifted form, and it also doesn't work unless you shapeshift out of the form and back into the form. It's actually kind of complicated, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. And what do I mean by complicated? Well, if I attack with a werewolf form, or a werebear form, you'll notice that I start to gain stacks, and these stacks will continue until I run out of the werebear form, and I only got like 3 stacks there. They don't generate based on your attacks, they generate based on time. So you have to remain in the form for a certain period of time to gain access to them, and you have to exit the form before the Wildheart Hunger is finished, and then return to a werewolf or werebear form before the timer wears out. So in other words, it would look something like this. You attack, you switch out of the werebear form, and then back into it. And you're going to keep doing this repeatedly, but you're going to have to wait in the werebear form for a little while to make sure that the stacks are accumulating. You can only get about 2 or 3 stacks per transformation, and doing this back and forth is going to allow you to keep those stacks growing until eventually you hit the point at which you have the maximum stacks. And if you are switching back and forth between a werewolf form and a werebear form, this could definitely work a lot easier. But you do have to actually physically stay in the werebear form or the werewolf form for a certain period of time and to keep them activated. And as long as you are constantly switching between forms, usually you're fine. So if you're doing something like this,
Mr. Goody Two Shoes, Mr. Goody Two Shoes. Ginger Evil Mentor here. Why bother farming when you can go to MMOEXP.com and simply purchase your items in gold? GGM would have you farm the items. What a pathetic being. Use code GEM Ginger Evil Mentor for 6% off your entire purchase. And don't tell Ginger Gaming Mentor that I was here.
You're not really going to have too much of an issue keeping the Wildheart Hunger activated at the full 20 stacks, which of course is going to give you all the bonus. However, if you remain out of your werebear form, or even in your werebear form, for a certain period of time without shifting, all 20 stacks will go away, and then you're going to have to rebuild them. It takes a little while to get these stacks really up and pumping, but once you do, it definitely does add a lot of damage to your character. I do think that these are pretty good, but I'm really upset that I can never seem to find them in good shape. And speaking of finding them, let's take a look and see where you can find them. So over on Diablo 4.life, we've got the target farming tool. And basically you go down here and you just search for Wildheart Hunger. And as you can see, they drop from Lord Seer. So if you want to try and farm yourself a nice pair of Wildheart Hunger boots, you're going to have to save up some bloods and you're going to have to farm Seer. Another way that you could potentially do it is just buy them off of one of the trade sites with gold, and instead farm Lord Seer with the Sorceress, get yourself a really nice Fractured Winter Glass, sell the Fractured Winter Glass for a large amount of gold because it also drops from Lord Seer because Fractured Winter Glass is super expensive this season, and then maybe just buy yourself a nice pair of Wildheart Hungers. That's probably what I should do. They're definitely a very nice addition to the game. Once you get used to the wonky way that the stacks accumulate, I think pretty much you can get a good use on this on just about any character as long as you're transforming into a werebear or werewolf form at some point. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is the key is that you have to transform out of your werewolf or werebear form at least once every couple seconds to maintain the stacks. So, I mean, if you wanted to actually just count it out, when I use my werebear form, you can see it's 1/1000. Actually, no, let's start from scratch here. Hold on. So, 1/1000, 2/1000, 3/1000, 4/1000, 5/1000, and it's gone, right? So, exactly as stated on the boots, the Wildheart ability lasts for 5 seconds, which means that you can only remain in the werebear form for 4 seconds before the Wildheart buff deactivates. That means you have to transform to another form in 1/1000, 2/1000, 3/1000, 4/1000, 1/1000, 2/1000, 3/1000, 4/1000, and you're going to keep doing this back and forth. Now, if you just transform back and forth as fast as possible, sometimes what happens is it doesn't stack up. So one of the things I've noticed is that it only really stacks up while you're in your werebear form. It doesn't stack up while you're in the human form as easily because obviously you're not refreshing the Wildheart buff. So the Wildheart buff doesn't get refreshed unless you enter a shapeshifted form. So you're just, basically that's all you're really doing when you're doing this is you're just refreshing that 5-second buff repeatedly. You're trying to make sure that the 5-second buff doesn't end and you refresh it before it ends so that the stacks continue to climb. And as long as you're constantly resetting that 5-second buff, you're fine. So you just need to make sure that you're shapeshifting once every 4 seconds and the buff will stay active permanently. I think that's pretty much it for this pair of boots. It's definitely a very good pair of boots, and if you're interested in running any kind of shape-shifting build, you might want to consider adding them in. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and be sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And as always, keep watching.